With now a week to settle in on things, what's still your purest emotion?
The purest emotion is still disappointment. You know, I'm still disappointed. I've gotten past it. You know, 15, 20 minutes later, I was fine, okay? It was just that moment and realization that you're not getting in this time. And it was so devastating and frustrating because this is the first time I've ever been a finalist. You know, I'm all decade of the 70s and never been in a room discussed as a finalist. So this is the first time, and that gave me a little more confidence, you know, and I'm thinking, well, they've had this stigma for years, the only one of the 18 all-decade wide receivers, you're the only one not in. You would think they want to correct that, you know, because now that's going to be the most asked question of the committee, you know, why isn't this guy in and 17 others are in? And so the thing you feel now is still disappointment, but also you understand the situation. This is what makes the NFL Hall of Fame the greatest of all, all Hall of Fames, period, is that it's so hard to get into. It adds to the prestige of it. And so when I get in, if I ever get in, I'm gonna say, yeah, keep it tight, you know, make it even tighter, you know, tighten it up, you know, because like I said, it is the most prestigious. And the reason is because it is so difficult. But it also showed a side of the finalists that people don't see, you know? When your name's not called, or when you are a finalist, a modern day finalist, and you hear that knock on the door and they tell you you didn't make it, you know? I mean, nobody ever sees the disappointment that these families and that player shares with his family, you know, in that moment. You know, I think this might have been the first time it was exposed that somebody that didn't get in, you know, their feelings, their emotion, how that made them feel. And man, this is something I'm not going to sit here and say I always dreamed of being in the Hall of Fame, you know, but I always dreamed of being a professional athlete. And then when I made the Cowboys, when I went down that tunnel in Texas Stadium or some of those fields we played on away games, I wanted my performance that day to be a stepping stone, a building block to one day be in that Dallas Cowboy Ring of Honor. When I made the Cowboys, that was my goal, to be in the Ring of Honor. Then I said, well, if I make that, I have a career that warrants that, then maybe that same career would warrant an NFL Hall of Fame recognition as well.
Do you go back and watch some of the clips and how you emoted after the disappointing news? And what goes through your heart when you see those clips? What did that display about Drew Pearson?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was a little disappointed I showed that emotion publicly. You know, I'm a private person. No one knows much about my private life, my personal life, and they shouldn't. You know, I made a conscientious effort to keep that private. So to show that kind of emotion in that situation, you know, crying and, you know, the words I said and the disappointment I felt, you know, once I looked at it, I kind of wished it wasn't public. But as it turned out, that might be the best thing that ever happened for it to go public, because all the responses I gotten, you know, Twitter and Facebook and all this kind of stuff, I don't follow too much of that, but they're sending me the responses of the public. And, you know, you think, well, you think some of the responses might be, well, wait your turn and all this kind of stuff. Who do you think you are, you know, compared to these other guys that are wanting to get in, you know? So you expect that kind of response coming out of a situation like that, because people get that Twitter courage and all that. They say things they might not say to you face to face. So you know, you expected that, but it didn't come out that way. If there were responses like that, I didn't see any. You know, all the responses were pretty positive, and it wasn't just Cowboy Nation, you know. It was other teams that saw you play and respect your play and say, hey, yeah, we think you should be a Hall of Famer.
Couple of questions I was asked, Drew, coming out of, you know, the end of that telecast when you found out you didn't make the Hall of Fame this go-round, was Drew Pearson that confident that he was going to make it? Is that why he had that entire media contingent and invited us, which we're grateful for? Is that why you invited the entire media contingent into your home?
Well, I did that because I know all you guys. One guy asked, and I'd say yeah. And the next guy, how can you say no down the road? And I didn't anticipate all the stations wanting to cover that. But they did. And I invited everybody, and I invited family, close friends, my grandkids. I wanted them to be there. Because again, this is the first time I've ever been a finalist. I don't know how to act as a finalist. What are you supposed to do? What's the criteria? I thought this is what you're supposed to do in case you got in, that you shared that emotion, that moment with your family, friends, and people that are close to you. But not only that, I wanted to share it with Cowboy Nation. I wanted to share it with the world because, you know, there's a ton of Cowboy fans out there, and everywhere I go, people say, you should be in the Hall of Fame. I can't believe you're not in the Hall of Fame. I make speech presentations, get introduced. Drew Pearson, a Ring of Honor and NFL Hall of Famer. I get to the podium, I say, hey, you know something I don't know? You know, so people even think you're in there already simply because a lot of it is because you're all decade selected by the Hall of Fame committee. So I wanted to share that with the world, Cowboy Nation. But I didn't want to share that disappointment, that frustration with the world, but I didn't have any control over it at that point. And I only felt that way after I saw the video and said, oh man, is that Drew? Is that me? And so, but you know, that negative, you know, what do you do with that? You try to turn that into a positive. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm here with you, Keith, so we can turn this into a positive.
So the positive message, when people see Drew Pearson, who played one of the roughest, toughest games ever, the roughest, toughest game ever known to man, that Drew Pearson is literally crying over a monumental disappointment. How do you spin that into a positive?
Well, first of all, you don't dwell on it, okay? There's nothing you can do about it. Like I said, I can't run any routes. I can't catch any more balls. It is what it is. If it's good enough, I'll get in. And apparently, at this point, it's not good enough, so that's why I'm not in. But I'm sorry. What was
like in terms of what message, a positive message you can send to others, and I'll phrase it in a way where I want you to know where I'm coming from, in the fact that it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
It's okay to have emotion.
Yeah.
It's okay to be tearful.
Yeah.
But people don't expect that from a guy who played the roughest, toughest game ever.
Yeah. Well, Keith, a lot of that is because they think we're invincible. They think we're just an athlete, somebody, a celebrity or whatever. They don't think we have these personal feelings or a personal life. You know, that's not the first time I've had tremendous disappointment in my life, you know? Not being drafted into the NFL. I've lost 3 brothers and 2 sisters to different ailments that passed away before me. My mom and dad are gone. I've cried a lot in my life. You know, I ended my career in the NFL because I was in a car accident on the LBJ freeway where I lost my brother in that accident. He's sitting next to me. And so I've cried. I've showed a lot of emotion. But this is the first time I really showed it publicly. And maybe this will show people that we athletes are human too. You know, we have feelings. We have disappointment and frustrations in our lives that we try to fight through. All those things that turned out to be disappointments in my life and brought sadness in my life, I try to turn those things into positives. And the way you do that is you first of all, you got to have the faith, okay? You got to believe in something. And I believe in God, and I know He's watching over me. That's why I'm not so concerned about the getting into the Hall of Fame, because I'm going to get in when it's God's time. Just like the Ring of Honor. I waited 29 years for that. And everybody said, oh, you should have been in. Well, this is God's time. And God knows, because that helped me my popularity at that time where I really needed it. It gave it a boost, and He knows what He's doing. So, you know, what you got to do is keep the positive attitude and know that things happen for a reason, and try to build on that, and not try to take the negative side of it, but look at it on the positive side and say, how can I turn this negative into a positive? And the best way to do that is just to keep going, doing the same things you're doing, maybe doing it a little better or whatever, but definitely keep doing the same things that you're doing.
Next year, and hopefully it comes your way next year, and if not next year, the next year.
Yeah.
How do you approach that time come this time next year?
Well, if it happens, it happens. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not going to worry about it, okay? I'm not going to get emotional like I did. I felt I was really close this time. And I don't know if that'll ever happen again. And if it does, great. But I'm not going to let that define me moving on. I have been so blessed, Keith, to be a former Dallas Cowboy. I have had so many opportunities in my life. I've been to the White House. I met 3 presidents shaking my hand, patting me on the back, saying good game and all that kind of stuff. You caught the Hail Mary. They know all that, you know. I met celebrities. I've done all kinds of things in this market, and then on a national basis. So I'm okay being a former Dallas Cowboy. And now if you add that moniker Hall of Fame to that, then that'll just make it even better. But I'm okay being a former Dallas Cowboy, and if it does happen, I'll be a happy former Dallas Cowboy, but until then, I'm okay right now, and I feel blessed to be in the position that I'm in as a former Dallas Cowboy.
And lastly on this topic, Drew, now that we're, a week removed and everyone feels like they know Drew Pearson a little bit better, whether it be people who saw your career live and in person. I certainly saw some of your highlights while I was in Philadelphia rooting on the other side. I saw you running up and down the field. And whether it be people who just saw video clips after the fact or people who just know you as a personality, we all feel like we know Drew Pearson a little bit better after the scene at your house. What would you like people to know about Drew Pearson beyond that?
Well, that I'm human. If you look at my track record, you look at my career, you look back at my life, you notice that I've had a lot of setbacks and I've overcome each and every one of those setbacks. And some of those setbacks, the pain still lingers, but you still keep moving on. And I think that's what people learned about Drew Pearson, that they knew that I was this kind of guy. That's why I was able to make those clutch catches in the final minutes of games. I never got discouraged. I never thought we were out of the game, So when I had setbacks in my life, I never thought that this was going to define me. This is the end, So I'm just going to keep on working and keep on pushing. And now people know that I have these kind of emotions, that Drew Pearson can cry. Drew Pearson does hurt if something there to hurt him, So again, people think that professional athletes, celebrities, are immune to this kind of stuff. But you think of back in some of these guys, the stories we've had, leading up, the 30-30s and all that kind of stuff you see on TV. What gets you is not so much what they did in their career, but what gets you is how they got to that career, the things they overcame. That's when you start tearing up and stuff like that, when you watch those kind of things that they do on your life and your career. So that's what I just opened myself up to that. And now people know that I have that kind of emotion. I have those kind of feelings. And just like anybody else, I can be disappointed. I can be frustrated. And, but what do you do when that happens? I'm not giving up. I'm here with you. I'm not hiding, You just keep going on. You keep pushing on. And you feel thankful that people have the respect that they have for you. They didn't show me much respect that day by not getting into the Hall of Fame. But since then, with the emotions I saw, boy, I'm reading all the texts and Twitter and all that, you find out that people still have that respect for you, whether you're a Hall of Famer or not.